Welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Poikinen. I'm here in frigid, half burnout. God, I can't wait to get out of here, Boulder Creek, California. I am joined by my better than your co-host, Glory Jones. What's happening, Glory? How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
It's good to see you. We missed you. You're in Utah.
Missed you guys too. Might be ranting just a bit today.
Land of the Mormons and Mitt Romney and places you just strap the team dog on the roof of the bus and go play some ball.
Yeah, it was really pretty. There was a lot of snow in more ways than one.
So it was a heavy cocaine day.
I love how that's where your mind goes.
So bad. The 90s were a special time.
You know what? Too bad I have no idea what that was like.
Right. Because you weren't even a gleam in your father's eye at that point.
No, I wasn't, Steve.
No, you're like 7. It's fucking weird.
I know, and you were like 60 at that time too, man. Like,
oh my God,
man.
We are joined recording by independent journalist extraordinaire, hanging out with us from Damascus, Vanessa Beeley. How are you? It's good to see you again.
I'm fine, and I'm probably going to be joining Glory in a bit of a rant.
That's what we're here for.
When I come on here, you know that, right?
Everywhere
else, I have to be kind of serious, and proper. Here, I can come and just let rip.
Yeah, it's fucking great. I dig it. It's the sort of niche I wanted to carve out anyways. And the side effect for that is I have become independent media's involuntary therapist. But I like people just call me to work their shit out. It's pretty funny. But holy crap, dude, it's been absolutely insane where you are for decade, but really since the election and the inauguration, Syria's been prepping for travesty, and we're all here to learn about it. So that's why you're here. So you can but before we so I'd kind of like to break this up a little bit and like mix up the tragedy and the hilarity. So if you'd like to open with the festering, flaming shit pile that is Bellingcat's book, we can do that.
Open source intelligence. Woo!
Revolution on a laptop.
Revolution on a laptop. I gotta go find that.
I really can't think of any other outlet that has been an intelligence agency for the people. Really, just truly revolutionary. I can't think of anybody else that does it like Bellingcat. Not one person.
So I'm gonna
CIA and MI6.
I want to pull up that thread that Piers Robinson put up, just kind of dissecting this, and we can go from there because that shit was funny. Like,
I do want to say, Elliot Higgins is my proudest Twitter block. I don't really brag about that kind of. I don't really brag about Twitter, but being blocked by Elliot Higgins is really up there for me.
Yeah, I was kind of blocked and unblocked, depending on his mood, on whether he wanted to engage with me or not. It was hilarious. I went through periods of kind of blocked, then unblocked, then muted, then blocked.
I mean, look, just the sheer audacity on the cover of the book.
And Applebaum.
And Ann Applebaum, yes. But the story of the most innovative practitioners of open source intelligence and online journalism in the world.
But can I just make a point? Ann Applebaum is Integrity Initiative, and Integrity Initiative made it quite clear that what their name? Bellingcat are not reliable. So, I mean, honestly, I did actually spend a morning reading this tripe, and as I've just said, it was like entering a black hole of bullshit.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I actually struggled to find any element of truth in it. I'm like, okay, it's published by Bloomsbury. I mean, it's almost like the Harry Potter sequel, right? It's just pure fantasy.
I actually didn't make that connection initially, but that's hilarious. It is. It really the running commentary that you provided while you were going through this, equally hilarious. Bellingcat had, like, the whole purpose of the book is to muddy the waters between truth and reality on the Duma chemical attack, the OPCW report.
Well, I mean, no, it's not only, there's only 2,000 words, as Piers pointed out, on the OPCW case. But the rest of it, I mean, he runs through the history of the Syrian conflict and just basically revises history. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. There's not one element of academic discussion or ability to see two sides or to hear any kind of diverging views whatsoever. It's just, well, I'm just going to write history for the establishment, you know? I mean, we've had the BBC doing their freaking Mayday intrigue series, you know, which was effectively the same thing, revising history, whitewashing the white helmets, covering up the entire British Foreign Office operations, vast intelligence operations to support Al-Qaeda, ISIS link groups inside Syria with media and PR. And now we have Bellingcat, you know, the kind of the junior of the intelligence nexus, coming out with this kind of, I don't even know, it's a mix between Billy Bunter, Jennings, and Harry Potter. I mean, the way he writes is like a juvenile delinquent. I mean, there's just, I'm sorry, but it's the most appalling piece of shit I've ever read. And I've read some really bad shit from the other side, you know?
As a former juvenile delinquent, I would like to raise an objection. I would. I feel personally attacked by that because I consider myself a fairly articulate and well-spoken at times former juvenile delinquent. I believe that Elliot Higgins, he writes more like a mentally crippled yet insanely attention-driven, needy average student whose mom told him that he's special.
Yeah. Oh my God, that passage that was highlighted where he's talking about how he insulated himself from reality and by staying on his computer and playing video games all day, like, dude, like
Wait,
you know,
what?
On behalf of nerds, like, these state nerds are a fucking problem because they give us all a bad rap.
What comes across is the guy's a complete insecure narcissist, right? And in every single arena he puts himself in, they only have to pat him on the back and say, good job. And he's sold. He's sold. He's part of the system. I mean, he stalked The Guardian in their comments, according to, you know, if you read through, he stalked them. He literally commented every 5 minutes on every Guardian article until someone went, who the hell is this guy? Right? You know, I mean, he comes across like some sort of eager mass murdering puppy. You know, it's like he's enjoying, if I mean, you know, on a more serious note, when I look at how he's rewritten history, he's killed those Syrian people all over again. You know, in exactly the same way that in the West we rewrite the history over the Israeli genocide of the Palestinians. We kill them over and over again. Every time we wipe out their death, their murder, their massacre, the atrocities committed against them. And that's exactly what Bellingcat has done. He's just completely written out the deaths and the suffering and the misery and the bloodshed of the Syrian people in one absolutely appalling piece of shit writing. I mean, it's not even, who the hell edited this? I mean, they should be shot for letting this go out. I mean, Bloomsbury, for God's sake. I'm going to be writing to Bloomsbury because, come on, people. Really, I mean, it's not even good literature. It's not even, it's nothing. It should be in, I don't know, not even Boys' Own Journal. They're better.
I hear Teen Vogue is where you want to go for like narrative management and hipster war porn.
Well,
like Teen Vogue and Vice
fiction. That's what this shit is. It's like that fucking Comey Rule series on ABC TV. It's Empire fan fiction that, you know, dramatizes and fantasizes and makes these war criminals and intelligence assets seem so fucking romantic and chauvinist that you end up almost wanting to cheer for Western aggression and imperialism. And it's, you know, when you see through it, it's funny and tragic and ironic and a bunch of and maddening. Yeah,
and you know, it's exactly like the BBC Mayday series. You see the same old, you know, the George Monbiot's, the Anne Applebaums, all the same old cheerleaders for aggression and military adventurism coming out to cheer it on. You know, good old Elliot, he's done a great job exposing, you know, the theocracies, etc. No, hello, he's working for them.
The way the establishment trips over their own dicks to give each other trophies and awards for producing this Empire fan fiction, like there's an entire economy around it. There's an entire like little, you know, griftosphere that has just been built up around people patting each other on the back for writing fucking, you know, feel good stories about fucking massacring ground people. And I feel like we should, I don't know, bring back randomly showing up at gatherings like that to hurl tomatoes.
I think throwing up is the right.
Yeah, that'd be great, dude. Just, you know, I know a guy who can projectile vomit on command.
You know, too.
Like you gotta feed him, a pint of vodka first, but he can do it.
No, I mean, you know, it's extraordinary, and I think Piers
it's a gift. No, I don't think I did. I don't know. Shut up, Jones.
You fucking would.
Oh, can I be serious now for 1 second?
If you'd like, yeah.
No, I mean, I think reading through Piers's tweets in response to the 2,000 words on OPCW, I mean, again, just like the BBC series, it's lying by omission. And, you know, the thing is that we know that Bellingcat isn't averse to lying or making stuff up anyway. I mean, he created a draft document that didn't exist, that was sent by somebody that he didn't know who sent it, etc. I mean, you know, they're an intelligence cutout. I mean, they just received the information that they're supposed to put out there. Bellingcat is, in his own words, as dumb as bricks. That's something that he's thrown at me. I mean, in the book itself, he's congratulating Snopes on their fact-checking, the most respected fact-checking organization. I mean, seriously?
Just real quick, Snopes started out as a couple. And that was the entire organization, was this couple. And then they got an assistant, and the husband started banging the assistant. So now they're Snopes. And the ex-wife is just sitting there like collecting a check. And that's it. That's the most respected fact-checking organization in the history of always ever, is two people sitting around going, okay, is this what MSNBC says? Yeah. Okay, then this checks out. Yeah. Does the New York Times got something on this, hon? Yeah, they do. Okay, yeah, that checks out too.
Steve, the Associated Press says that this was the most free and fair election in all humankind.
Which is interesting because Time Magazine had a very different take this week. In fact, Time Magazine put it on the cover that some elite billionaires and some of the shit stains that fucking kowtow to management at the AFL-CIO got together to fortify and secure our election. Not rig it. Fortify and secure.
I love this Mexican. It's brilliant.
I mean, Steve, I know it sounded like it was a massive conspiracy and a cabal and, you know, a whole collaboration between elites and co-opted organizations, but you have to remember, it's not.
That's like just legit how the Great Reset commercial went too. Like, I know it sounds like an international conspiracy of people meeting behind closed doors in secret to plan your future, but don't worry. Because even though it is, it's you're a part of it too. Yeah, you are. That's what stakeholder capitalism is. It's the idea that you have a stake in what we do with your money, and you're okay with that, right? Because we said you are. So you're okay with that, and don't worry, because your betters have figured this out.
Yeah, or it's a bit like Joe Biden saying he's going to withdraw support for the Saudi offensive in Yemen. But by the way, if the Saudis are in need of defense, then he'll be there.
Yeah.
So figure it out, guys. Seriously. I mean, I don't know.
I
don't know whether it's
over themselves.
I don't know whether people want to believe unicorns shit rainbows. You know, is that it? Do they just forget history? Do they forget that Biden was vice president when Obama started the aggression against Yemen? Hello?
I was trying to tell a guy at lunch randomly last week that nothing gets memory hold faster than war crimes. And because he was like, you know, he was bitching about Donald Trump. And I'm like, oh, don't worry, man. He'll be dancing with Ellen in 4 years. You know, and the guy was like, what? No, never. I'm like, George Bush is arguably much, much, much worse than Donald Trump. Just on paper, in terms of body count and everything. George Bush, much worse. And yet he gets butterscotch candy from Michelle Obama, and he gets to fucking dance on Ellen, and they go hang out at baseball games together and shit like that. So Donald Trump will be rehabilitated by the U.S. media. He will be.
Yeah, hang on, we've got Tony Blair running the Great Reset in the UK.
Yeah, there's Tony Blair have never.
It's for our own good. It's for sustainability and a green future, so it's fine. You know, a freaking war criminal that torched former Yugoslavia and Iraq is interested in our sustainable future.
Yes, we're gonna trust the same war criminals that killed Black and brown people abroad and helped bring back literal slavery to the country of Libya. We're gonna put them at the forefront of this plan to digitally colonize half of the global South.
Yeah, and turn us into data colonies. Yep, that makes sense.
I mean, you know, they have so much practice at it. Why fucking not at this point? And it's so asinine because, like, there were so many people that knew exactly what Joe Biden was about. They knew exactly what his record was and what his foreign policy will be because they knew it themselves, and fucking we were telling them the whole goddamn time. Yet at the end of the day, they still voted for Biden in the name of stopping fascism.
Harm minimalization. They called it harm minimalization.
Yeah, why not choose to just fucking not legitimize the system at all? Why not do that? If it was a no-win, if it was a no-win situation, if it was a lesser of two evils situation, then why not just refuse to legitimize that at all? Instead, you go out of your way to legitimize it and then gatekeep on behalf of it. And now all of a sudden, you're perpetrating yourself to be at the forefront of holding Biden accountable. Like, bitch, take a fucking back seat already. And it's like you fell. Like you fell and you got on your knees to vote for Biden. And now this is what's happening in part because of your actions. So fuck you for that. Own up to it. At fucking least.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the amount of cheerleading there was when Biden was kind of elected.
It was disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, I was shocked. I was really shocked from people, even from people I know that had been to Syria. I was like, what is wrong with you? You know, if you think life under Trump was hell domestically, right? It was pretty hell on a foreign basis as well. But if you think Biden is going to be any better, and everyone's talking about domestic policy and health insurance and all this, I don't give a flying shit about your health insurance. They don't even have hospitals here. Yemen doesn't have hospitals anymore. That country is a biblical proportion humanitarian disaster. And it's not just happening. All these freaking UN reports saying, oh, you know, it's the worst starvation. No. They are being starved. They're not just starving. That doesn't happen. They are being starved by the UN, by the US coalition, by the Saudis, by every single fucking member of that coalition. And people need to start talking like that. I'm sick of this kind of like, oh, poor Yemen. Nobody's actually pinpointing the criminals in this. And the UN is number one. Right? Because of its verification mechanisms and so on that delay any humanitarian aid coming in there, and then it's so corrupt, the UN. It's creaming off the profit from most of the aid that does get into Yemen anyway, and it's not going to the Yemeni people.
Well, the sad fact of the matter is that most of these international charities are either giant money laundering operations or cutouts for intelligence operations.
Exactly. You know, and Biden, everyone jumping on this wagon saying, you know, oh, look, Biden's stopping the aggression on Yemen. No, he's not stopping the aggression on Yemen. He's occupying parts of Yemen. He's continuing basically the Obama drone warfare because he's going to continue targeting Al-Qaeda, Arabian Peninsula, right, which was the issue under Obama. And as I said, they're occupying Socotra, the island of Yemen, to support UAE. They're supporting UAE black site torture sites in the south of Yemen. Like, what the hell, people? Get real. Stop looking for these little bit of leprechaun fairy dust everywhere. It doesn't exist. These people are psychopaths.
Yeah, well, and the Biden administration, they have, you know, undenying support for the Zionist apartheid regime that is Israel, that literally, you know, bombs Syria on Christmas yearly. And like, you know, you're on the ground for that. When are people going to be able to stand up to Zionist politicians and say, no, you can't keep legitimizing this act? So if you could, you know, speak to that more.
Yeah, well, I mean, 2 days after Biden's inauguration, so on the 22nd of January, Israel attacked multiple sites from warplanes in Tripoli in Lebanon. So they were effectively invading Lebanese airspace to fire missiles into Syrian territory. They targeted central Syria. Of course, they always use the excuse that they're targeting Iranian militia or Iranian bases, but it's Syrian sovereign territory. They can have any allied forces they want on this territory, right? So this is violation of international law. Of course, it never gets mentioned. It never gets condemned in the UN or in the so-called international community, which is basically the US, the UK, and France. And 4 of those rockets hit a residential area that I visited in an area to the west of Hama, which is to the northwest of Damascus. And basically 4 rockets landed in a narrow residential street, and they killed a family of 5. There were actually 9 family members in one small little concrete house. The first rocket hit directly outside the house and killed 4 members immediately, buried under the rubble. 1 baby died later in hospital, and 4 other members were very grievously injured in that attack. And I'm yet to see any condemnation of that attack by the UN. It's unbelievable. I've been checking every day. Nothing. Nobody condemns the Israeli aggression. I mean, in 2020, the IDF is laying claim to having targeted 500 installations in Syria, right? Who's given them permission to do this? You know, Syria is not lobbing rockets into Israel. This isn't self-defense, right? I mean, it's just, and then of course you have now under Biden the increasing support for Kurdistan, for the partitioning of Syria into, now we're seeing the kind of the terminology autonomous region coming out in the media, right? And we're seeing various think tanks reporting to Biden that the most important thing is not to withdraw troops, but to actually build on the American occupation forces in order to protect the Kurdish separatists, the Kurdish Contras, which, by the way, are aligned with the PKK that the US once called a terrorist organization and put sanctions on Syria for harboring them. You know, this is the rank hypocrisy of the US when it's, you know, they can make terrorist friends when it's useful. It's
like
extraordinary.
20 years ago, The Onion put out an anthology, and it was called Our Dumb Century. And one of the very first articles that they had was like a spoof on, you know, like a Where Are They Now? And so it was a where are they now in terms of the US's relationship with the dictators that it had embraced in the 1980s. And that was the bit. But it was fucking hysterical because nowhere else were you going to see in the year, like in 2001, right before 9/11, really. There was a picture of Donald Rumsfeld shaking Saddam Hussein's hand from like the mid 80s when we had given Saddam Hussein a bunch of chemical weapons to go use on, and then we turned around 5 years later and punished him for using those chemical weapons. Yeah, we're what's the word? Satan.
Mm. Yeah, basically. You know, I mean, the thing is that we know, I mean, basically what's happening now in Syria is pretty much what happened in Iraq. In Iraq, they created effectively an autonomous region governed by the Kurds, which occupied the oil-rich territory of Iraq. And funnily enough, that particular sector was never put under the same sanctions that the US imposed on the rest of Iraq. And in Syria, we have exactly the same situation now. Of course, militarily, they failed. They've basically bogged themselves down in yet another military quagmire. But this is
another. Could have seen that coming.
You know, but this is another thing: is that people somehow, even though history tells you that the US will never leave a country it occupies, it will never finish a war it starts, right? They still somehow believe, yeah, everything will be all right. You know, Biden will withdraw his troops. Where do they get this idea from? The US only ever doubles down on the pain it is inflicting on prey nations, right? And what we're seeing now is an amplification of the Kurdish cause again. Of course, we're seeing, if you look at Twitter, if you look at the Rojava network, we're seeing how empowered the Kurdish separatists are feeling, right? They see Biden as the holy grail. They see Biden as the guy that's going to step in, He's going to carve out Syrian territory. He's going to up the power multiplication of their pathetic forces, right? And bring in more hardware. I mean, he's been doing it. Everyone's been saying it's a conspiracy theory. Bullshit. American hardware is pouring into Syria through the Iraqi border. Literally,
so they backed away from saying it's a conspiracy after they got flooded with the pictures and real-time video of this, and so they were like, okay. Well, look, okay, you guys are kind of right, because yes, it is coming in, but it's just routinely scheduled trips of this stuff anyway, where, you know, we had planned all along to pour massive amounts of military hardware into an occupied country, because that's just what we do. So, you know, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Somebody's gonna not smash a guitar on Saturday Night Live, so make sure you're looking at that. And don't worry about what happens over, because it's over there.
Yeah, and Vanessa, you raise a really good point about all just the hype in media and like a lot of influencers going, oh my God, Kurdistan. Oh my God, have you seen the workers' commune at Rojava? It's so edgy, and like being so hyped up by all these like CIA plans. And if you look up like Rojava on YouTube, you'll immediately get just like 50 videos just hyping this up as like some revolutionary ideal, and it's increased like with the rise in the Biden-Harris administration. So, you know, it's interesting that you point out that that's like one of the outlets for how they're going to break apart Syria, ignoring pretty much all of the support from like, you know, NATO and Western imperialists that, you know, Kurdish separatists get.
Well, I mean, look, let's be clear. The Kurds themselves are probably around 5% of the population in Syria, right? And of that 5%, it might be a little bit more, but let's say 5%. Of that 5%, an even smaller percentage are Kurdish separatists, because there are Kurds inside Syria that are not interested in separatism. They just want to go back to living in a unified Syria as they were pre-2011. Right? Now, those separatists, we saw them starting to negotiate with Damascus when Trump was in power, because Trump, he made an effort to withdraw troops, right? And certainly he was not perceived as someone that was behind the Kurdish agenda, let's say. And we have to also conflate the Kurdish agenda with the Israeli agenda. They're heavily supported by Israel because, of course, Israel and the Inon plan and yada, 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 the east of the Euphrates was always going to be part of New Israel, let's say, right? So for Israel, the Kurds are useful settlers. That's basically what it comes down to. And the Kurds have sold out. Yet again, historically, they've always done this. They have a history of doing this. And what we've seen since Biden was president-elect and before his inauguration, what we have seen is an uptick, surprisingly or not surprisingly, in ISIS attacks, right? Suddenly, ISIS, that Trump claimed was completely defeated, has reemerged. But why has it reemerged? I'll tell you why. Because America, US occupation forces, have been basically transporting them across into Iraq to retrain them, re-equip them, turn them back into a super ISIS to be repercolated back into Syria. Not only in Iraq, they've been taking them to Al-Tanf, the US occupation base, military base on the border with Jordan and Iraq. And there in the Al-Tanf base, in the 55-kilometer exclusion zone, so on Syrian territory, the US has a military base and a 55-kilometer exclusion zone around that base that Russia and Syrian troops are not allowed to enter. But from within that base and within that exclusion zone, the terrorist groups are able to use American hardware, the HIMARS or high mobility artillery systems, to fire on Russian and Syrian troops, right? And in the Rukban camp and in that exclusion zone, they are training and equipping and arming ISIS, and then sending them out on missions to target Syrian Arab army convoys on the Deir ez-Zor road, which is the main road from the northeast down to Homs and then to Damascus. So it's also the road that is used to bring what little fuel is allowed to come into the Syrian territory, still under the control and protection of the Syrian state, right? So ISIS has suddenly reemerged, and we're also, I sent Steve earlier an article by the BBC, of course, you know, the mouthpiece of the UK Foreign Office, again amplifying this idea that ISIS is coming back. Well, of course it's coming back, because the US is arming it and equipping it and sending it back. Why? Because that will enable Biden to come in and support the SDF in their fight against ISIS. So, hey presto, you have greater military footprint, US military footprint on Syrian territory, and you have the autonomous region starting to become a term, a part of the mainstream media lexicon. And we haven't seen that before. That's only in the last couple of days I've seen this autonomous region coming out. Like, what the hell? You know, it's Syria. This is Syria. You don't just come in. I mean, imagine if Russia came in and just, like, I don't know, funded a load of people in eastern New York and said,
Branson, Missouri is now an autonomous region. Actually, you could bury Branson, Missouri under a pile of rubble, and like 8 people would notice. But I get it, and that's a fantastic analogy. It's the way that people need to be thinking about this. If a foreign country came into your neighborhood and said, "Okay, this is ours now," and it's going to operate.
That's the area which has all the oil resources. So, you know, not only are they occupying it, they've sent up Delta Crescent Energy, which is working in collaboration with the Kurdish separatists in order to provide revenue for the Kurdish separatists, so the US doesn't have to pay them, and to steal Syrian oil so that we don't have electricity, we don't have heating, we don't have fuel for the cars, etc.
Which literally violates all international laws and norms against looting, but just gets ignored.
Yeah. And this is because COVID, you know, COVID is being used as such a distraction technique. Nobody's looking at what's happening in the rest of the world, basically. Right. The rest of the world, I mean, Yemen declared herd immunity in October 2020, probably because also they're like, what the hell? You know, we're starving. We've got diphtheria, cholera. We've got every disease on the planet. We've got no hospitals and we're being bombed. Who gives a shit about COVID? Right. And it's pretty much the same here. If I go and talk to the people that were bombed by Israel on the 22nd, they're not talking to me about corona. Oh, no. But by the way, 1.3 million given by the US, the UK, and Canada to the White Helmets to produce PPE in Idlib for the corona crisis.
God. Yeah.
Sort it out, seriously. You know, how come we can find 1.3 million for an Al-Qaeda linked auxiliary, but nobody's getting a payout for losing their livelihood and for being homeless, right? Because
you gotta look at it in terms of, if the government's not willing to do it for their own people in the midst of crisis, they're probably not going to cough up for the people whose lives they helped destroyed overseas either. And they're talking about, like, maybe now by June they'll send out some coronavirus relief bill here domestically, and it's like, how are you fucking? They're expect. Like, I don't get it. I understand that it's a fucking rigged game. I understand that the Democrats stolen election and put themselves into power and are now in a position to where they can like say fuck you, we're in charge, which is exactly what they're doing. But the audacity by which they're doing it amazes me. That's what kind of like has me taken aback by it, is the degree to which they're just willing to fucking slap balls on the table and be like, take it. Yeah, no, you fucking down. They're right here on the table. No, come up. Yes, yeah, do that. And people are like, well, they're working for us. This is all the Republicans' fault. The Republicans were offering you more money with less pork a month and a half ago. And now you've twisted yourself into a logic pretzel where somehow $2,000 equals $1,400 and immediately equals June.
No, Steve, you see, you got to take into account that other 600. It comes together with the 1,400 to make 2,000. And then because
that was Trump's 600.
Bro, Moscow Mitch, it's all on him, bro, and like Kevin McCarthy, and then Trump, man, like the insurrection on Capitol Hill. We gotta listen to AOC, man. $1,400, and mind you, students aren't getting any of that stimulus either. Like, we're gonna get fucking screwed either way.
Oh, dude, if you're single and you don't have kids, you are well fucked and far from home. You are.
Who? Oh, I'm back.
I think you're back.
Bernie wore mittens, so it's all fine.
Right? Yeah. Bernie Sanders fucking strapped on them bitch mittens and made everyone's day. Like, oh, the whole world's burning and everything's shitty, but an old man wore mittens, so I guess it's all right. Fucks.
Where's my weasel?
Seriously, if anyone is in like 20 kilometers of the Large Hadron Collider, you need a catapult and something smarter than a weasel. Fling it, get it stuck, and hurl us into a less stupid timeline. Please. Please.
We can hold multiple trials if we don't use like okay, so I brought up the point that we should use like invasive species. That way we get like the sacrifice element of something still living, but we can hold multiple trials to try and get into different timelines.
We're going to like feed the Large Hadron Collider kudzu.
I mean,
you think that's going to work?
Like box jellyfish, lionfish, Henry Kissinger, like.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Vanessa.
That was a solid joke, Jones. Well done. Hell yeah. That's a goddamn keeper. If we haven't explained this to you, Vanessa, the theory is in 2016, and this is fact, a weasel got stuck in the Large Hadron Collider and it forced a hard reset of the Large Hadron Collider, made it a hard stop. So my theory is that moment is when we got hurled into the stupidest of all possible timelines, which is where we now reside. So if we put a different animal in the collider, perhaps we could go to a less stupid timeline.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I'm not saying that this is based in any sort of sound science. I'm not trying to make that claim. I want to make that perfectly clear.
We've had like whole segments of this show dedicated to discussing like what we're gonna throw in there.
Like a year and a half later, it's like, no, this is based on no science whatsoever. I'm a dude who smokes a little pot every now and then, and it seemed like it made sense at the time.
Well, it makes an awful lot more sense than most of what we're reading at the moment, let's face it, especially Bellingcat.
Yeah, no, if you, I would like to see. I
Maybe
guarantee you.
Bellingcat in there.
Oh, because this is I don't. You know what? I should pitch this to Bellingcat. I should. I should ask Elliot to unblock me, and I should tell him that little bitch ass dude. Like can you imagine? Like, can you imagine spending your entire life running away from people on Twitter?
But they all
You
do.
know? Like, no, I can't deal with reality. I'm sorry. I work for Bellingcat. You're going to have to go away.
Or I work for the Guardian or the BBC. They all do it. They all protect their tweets as soon as they get in a conversation with me. I don't know why.
It's pretty fucking funny, man. It is the amount of people that like go into lockdown or hiding as soon as like you show up or Ryan shows up or we show up. No.
Yeah, I know. They were tweets protected.
I suddenly remembered that I had a vacation to go on.
Yeah, that was Chloe.
Fucking Chloe. My God, dude, it's been a wild like few months for you, Beeley. It has.
Oh yeah. No, yeah.
We were talking on Anonymous Bites Back last night about the possibility that Turkey is recruiting its fucking head choppers from Syria in order for Erdogan's government to help keep the student protests from taking root. Do you know anything about that? Like, what's going on with that?
Well, I mean, Turkey basically recycles the head choppers from Syria pretty much everywhere. Azerbaijan and Libya, wherever they need it. In the northeast, I mean, that was one of the kind of comical things was the mainstream media, of course, never entered Idlib because it's full of head choppers, right? But they were perfectly safe in the Kurdish Contra section of Syria. So they all piled in from Iraq, staying in 4-star hotels on the border and then coming in with the permission of the SDF and being escorted around by the SDF. So the Northeast was jam-packed full of mainstream media, right? Not with the permission of the Syrian government, of course, but with the permission of the US occupation forces and the SDF. And then suddenly, Turkey took all the head choppers from the Northwest, where the mainstream media didn't dare go because they'd get the heads, and brought them to the Northeast. And you've never seen such a mass exodus of media suddenly screaming, the moderate rebels are here, the moderate rebel. They weren't saying it like that. They were saying Al-Qaeda is here. And I'm like, yeah, but in Idlib, they were moderate rebels. But suddenly when you have to come face to face with them, shit, they're Al-Qaeda. I mean, it's just, I don't know. Like, this world has just been so insane for so long, and it's really...
makes the guy want to just go a little bit deeper into the woods.
Definitely.
Bag of mushrooms and a gun and a fishing pole, and like that's it. Maybe a blanket, a towel. Gotta have a towel.
Yeah, I mean, there's one big advantage of being here. Like everything is very clear, right? I'm not relying on the media to tell me what's going on here. I can see it from my own eyes. I'm speaking to the people. I'm speaking to people that know what's going on here, right?
And for that, you're demonized, and for that, you're like a focal piece of a well-funded and well-produced smear series. It's like when you just go out and you talk to people, when you talk to the people who are the collateral damage of or the targets of U.S. foreign policy, and you just ask them questions or you describe what you see, you're somehow painted as a villain into it, which is just so fucking upside down, because you talk to the people who survived U.S. foreign policy. Like, they wouldn't be survivors if the U.S. hadn't decided to invade their country in the fucking first place and try to acquire their natural resources, because it's all about gaining complete and total control over the globe. But you're somehow the bad guy for talking to the people who are in the way of U.S. foreign policy aims.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Yeah, and it's been going on for years now. But the thing is with propaganda is it really doesn't age very well. You know, because facts on the ground move forward so fast. It's like the OPCW situation, right? It's a complete scandal of weapons of mass destruction proportioned. And you have idiots like Bellingcat trying to stick an elastoplast on a hole in a dam that is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And they can't control it. I mean, the BBC series was a complete flop, apart from, you know, the establishment circle jerk that all joined together to go, yeah, great job, Chloe. It was a shit job. I mean, there was so much omission in that program. I don't know. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. There's a real them and us now. There used to be this kind of middle ground, and where actually journalists were a little bit cleverer about how they packaged the lies, right, in the past. Now there's a real divide. There's a chasm between people that kind of think, well, hang on, that doesn't sound right, and these people up here that are just maintaining the propaganda at all costs. I had a conversation a few days ago with Juliet Harkin, who in 2004 was the head of BBC Media Action in Syria, identifying areas of reform, identifying members of the opposition that could carry through that reform. But of course, she came on Twitter to argue with me that she was doing it all for the best of Syria. But the fact is, the woman is still maintaining the bad Assad, good rebel story now in 2021.
Yeah.
You couldn't answer, and she's another one that after about, I think it was about 6 hours of conversation on Twitter, and I was really polite. She blocked me and protected her tweets.
Wait, were you really polite, or were you like, but I was really polite? Because there's a difference. There is. I've seen you in a mood. So
honestly, I was actually really polite. I was just saying to her, okay, look, you know, because she was claiming to be this neutral academic, and apart from the fact that she worked for Chatham House, she worked for the Economist Intelligence Unit, she worked for BBC Media Action, she worked for, what was it, Internews, that is run by UK Aid, and BBC Media, all of these.
Neutral?
So she was trying to press this fact that she was this kind of neutral academic, you know, just. So I kept saying to her, okay, so where is your academic dissertation on the UK Foreign Office operations in Syria? Or are you just blissfully ignorant that these exist? And she kept just sidestepping the question. The UK didn't start the war in Syria. Yeah, they did, actually. And history shows they did. Anyway, after about, I think it was around 6 hours of Twitter conversation with her, she blocked me and protected her tweet.
God, I had got tagged in an Assange related post, and around at like 8 o'clock at night on the West Coast, it got invaded by a bunch of like J-Trig trolls. Like the whole crew just showed up, and then almost as if summoned, Louise Mensch appears. And like, I haven't had a direct encounter with what I'm going to assume isn't in fact a person, but actually a bunch of ferrets on methamphetamine in a skin suit, given a little bit of like overall instruction on how to manipulate a keyboard. I don't believe that this is an actual human being anymore. I really don't. But the amount of like concentrated psycho
Oh my God.
that goes into, you know, anywhere from like 180 to 240 characters inside of a Louise Mensch tweet is just insane, dude. Like, if you could pull that out and just sort of spread it around a little bit, we'd probably overall have a better balanced planet, because that much crazy in one little box it's dangerous. It is.
I hate that you reminded me of Louise Mensch, because I was doing so well to not think of that Twitter account.
Right, yeah. And she like okay, this is why I don't think it's a person. You're gonna take a lot to convince me that Louise Mensch actually exists, and that's not just partially trained methamphetamine out ferrets in a skin suit. Okay, like, it's gonna take a minute. You have to work at that shit, because the beating that like a half dozen Anons that were like, oh my God, they summoned the Mensch, I'm coming in, you know. Like, but going to just to fucking take a swing at this crazy bitch, dude. Like, and she just sits there and gets like more powerful. Like, the better zingers you get, like, it aids her crazy, and she's like, and fucking, oh my God, dude, it's a shit show. I couldn't do that for 6 hours, man. I couldn't do that for like 6 minutes. I saw what was going on. It was like, fuck it, I'm bailing. But man, dudes, yeah, I don't know if I've ever like dedicated 6 hours to a Twitter war. It don't.
Well, no, it wasn't really a war. I was kind of fascinated. I was fascinated at how they wriggle, you know, like how they avoid answering questions. And I was seriously civil. I was deliberately being civil because I wanted to
don't you hate that?
Answers from her, you know?
Like, because it takes energy to be nice to these fucking demons. It really does. Like, you've got to go outside of your normal routine, you know. And I hate it with like you're actually trying, you know. Yeah. Like, okay, fine. All right, go ahead. Tell me. Seriously, tell me. I'm gonna go ahead, and they go and they walk like 18 miles around the question, and you're like, fuck you. But no. I really wanted to have a conversation this time. I promise. Can we do that? And they're like, yeah, no. No. Oh, dude.
Yeah. No, it was extraordinary. It was, yeah.
Neutral. Like, I still can't get over that. Neutral.
I'm still hung up on autonomous regions. I really am.
In 2015, she signed a Guardian petition. No, she signed a letter that was published in the Guardian. So it was pretty much a Guardian petition, basically calling for greater intervention in Syria after yet another misreported incident, of course. Which, by the way, the Bellingcat book is absolutely jam-packed full of, from the Hula massacre in 2012. That was a massacre of Alawites and loyalists to the Syrian government, but of course was portrayed as the Syrian government massacring its own people. And it was only then, at that point, the Russian and Chinese veto that prevented UN intervention, of course. You know, and that's what this entire war has been about. It's been about pushing the red line to enable escalated aggression against the Syrian government. And of course, it's failed, largely thanks to, certainly in a diplomatic setting, China and Russia, but the way Bellingcat just runs through these stories, it's unbelievable. I mean, apart from anything else, people, even if you don't want to believe one side or the other, this is a war zone. How can you be so absolutely... Oh, and this is one other thing that I want to point out. And if Bellingcat's listening, I really hope you're listening to this. because in the early days, y'all, in the early days, right, he actually says he relied on Bambuser. Now, Bambuser was a media platform that was actually established by a VARS, right? The petition public influencing behavioral insight crowd, right? And the problem with Bambuser, yeah, all of their little trained honchos like Danny Abdul Dayem and Rami Jada and all these people that were embedded in Syria as citizen journalists to send reports in for CNN and Al Jazeera and Al Arabi and all these Western aligned media companies to pick the reports up and use them in their live stream, right? But the problem with Bambuser is they didn't upload only the live stream section. They uploaded the bit before, which shows them rehearsing the live stream, and the bit after, which shows them jumping up from pretending to be dead and laughing their heads off, just as an example, right? And there's thousands of hours of shit like this. And I've actually made a documentary called The Veto, with a Syrian documentary maker, Rafiq Latif, who got hold of all the footage from Bambuser. So all the before and after. So CNN would take the whole shot, use the middle bit, which was the staged bit, as their live story, right? But not show the bit before where the guy's going, okay, bring in the rifle shot, bring in the tank shot, whatever, right? So here's Bellingcat publicly saying he used Bambuser as his source of information when he first started reporting on the Syrian conflict, and that includes for the Hula massacre. So here's a guy sat on his laptop, on his armchair, a video gamer, right, using an Avaz established platform that these terrorist aligned journalists and activists and so on are uploading their staged events. And that's what he's basing his information on. And that's what NATO, NED, and all these other intelligence-linked operations are paying him to do.
I just wanted that to like absorb. I just fucking... I live in an area of the country that is overran with NPR liberals. I think we've talked about this before. Like Ronald Reagan said, Orange County is where good Republicans go to die. Santa Cruz is where good Democrats go to die. Like if you've successfully, helped manage the empire to the point to where you too can have short gray hair and a tie-dyed shirt and a $90,000 car, like, and you show up in Santa Cruz. And I've heard people like parrot these. I don't know if they're Bellingcat. They're all basically, State Department talking points. But I've heard like normal, regular people parrot these lines like, oh, we're going to return to normal relations with the rest of the world. Well, like that doesn't mean a reign of terror and death, and so when I hear this shit, because I'm that motherfucker, I'll jump into their conversation and be like, hey, you realize that a return to global norms means we're going to rain down hellfire on a bunch of people, like literal hellfires, because that's what we named the missiles. You realize that, right? And people like they're just so used to absorbing the propaganda and repeating it that like they actually don't. There's a giant disconnect between what that phrase, a return to norms, means in real times and real cost and in actual blood and human life. And so when you force people to sort of process that, that's when they're like, oh, fuck. Yes, and that's what you voted for. That's what you were so proud of voting for. That's what you went and dressed up your fucking car the day after election day for, was a return to civilized people committing the atrocities.
It's almost, and I raised this on another show recently, and it was sort of a little bit poo-pooed. But if we go back to 2016, and Syria at this point was winning the military war. Russia had come in September 2015, and militarily Syria was regaining territory, right? Now, if at that point Clinton had been elected, if Hillary had got in, there would have been backlash against her from the guys you're talking about, right? Because she was so clearly what she is, evil. I mean, you know, whatever. And at the same time, had Hillary come in, the non-aligned axis would have been absolutely tight as anything because she was so clearly the enemy, right? What happened, whether it was by design or by coincidence, Trump came in at that point, right? Suddenly, the non-aligned axis was a bit in disarray. Everyone started to think maybe with Trump we can have some kind of agreement. So everyone kind of, they didn't exactly splinter, but they sort of went off along their own roadmap for a while until they realized, no, actually we're not going to get anything out of Trump, right? But it caused a momentary kind of disintegration to some degree. Then basically what Trump did was to absolutely double down on the economic pressure on Syria. So America at that point couldn't win a military war, but it could bring in the economic measures to fully weaken the country. And under Trump, that was achieved. Suddenly, and then domestically, Trump was Satan, right? So people are literally gagging for Biden and Clinton and Obama and Kerry and all of these freaking war criminals to be back in power because anything's better than Trump. So if you actually look at it in that perspective, it's very easy to think this was all planned. Right?
These people are cheerleading for us to big up and gas up NATO.
Yeah.
Which, like, fuck NATO. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to pretend like there was any part of Trump's foreign policy which I liked. But
No.
by God, if he's going to stiff NATO, then okay, I'm all for it.
Exactly. But Biden, you're just going back to default Clinton position. Right?
Yeah.
It's like those 4 years just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I always remember, and this is going to sound really crazy, but I always remember when Clinton lost that election and they all turned up wearing purple. I don't know if you remember the pictures. Purple dress, purple tie, everyone in purple. I was like, shit. They knew this was going to happen. She still sees this as a victory, right? And look at the Biden, right? The Biden inauguration, purple's back in, folks. And I'm not going crazy about this. Purple is for the ruling elite. It's a really important color. It's the color of sovereignty. Yeah. Right. That's how they see
and royalty, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not by accident, you know.
No, Ryan and I have talked about this a bit, Last American Vagabond, but without Trump, without a fake right-wing strongman, without a fake populist for even 4 years, you don't get a permissive armed militant right wing laying down for that shit. You don't get lockdowns unresisted or barely resisted. You don't get the 3 largest recorded upward transfers of wealth in human history unresisted. You don't get like the way that coronavirus relief was rolled out amid the lockdown. None of that shit happens if Hillary Clinton is president, because you've got an activated right wing ready to resist that. But with Trump putting these fucks to sleep, and the dual conspiracies of Russiagate and QAnon being pummeled into the consciousness of regular people every fucking day, like none of this shit happens. So you're right, Vanessa. It wasn't so much that the Clintons lost; it was they got to take a break for a few years.
Yeah,
and to read. Sorry, I was just gonna say real quick. I would talk to Trump supporters on the ground, and they would be all over COVID. Like they would have the stats of like what the actual death rate was and what the history of vaccines were and research into that and how that would affect us. But then I would bring up, okay, so why aren't we mobilizing against the fact that military contractors are involved in Operation Warp Speed? Oh, what? I'm sorry, I didn't know about that. It's like, yeah, your guy Trump is letting it all happen. So it's like, just like Steve said, that's where QAnon comes in to pacify a portion of the right that could be activated, because QAnon was cheering on regime change in Iran and Syria when it happened to people that were predominantly, not necessarily anti-war or anti-imperialist, but, anti-intervention. So it's yeah, you can go.
No, I've forgotten what I was going to say. But yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, had the Democrats come in at that point in 2016, we'd be looking at a very different picture now, because they wouldn't have got away with what they're now going to bring in under Biden, right? Yeah. Now they can do what they want. One, because everyone's distracted with COVID. No one's paying any attention, really, to Syria or to Yemen or to Iran or to any other country except their own.
Just say nothing about the 300 million farmers in India that are striking right now. It's not like anybody hears about that or gets to talk about that. And when that does get presented, it's presented in the context of like, here's how neoliberal America would like to handle this situation.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and meanwhile, you have Biden in honeyed tones talking about Build Back Better, America will be, exactly as it was before, meaning, of course, it will go back to the kind of the Bush, Obama, Clinton era. And yeah, I know those are different parties, but I don't believe in the two-party system. No. There's a roadmap. And every single president follows that roadmap. It doesn't matter which party it is. But right now, you look at his administration. That's one scary administration. There isn't one war criminal that's been left out of it, as far as I can figure out.
No, and every single last one of them is an avowed Zionist.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to talk about that because that's one of those magic words that you're not allowed to say.
Yeah.
So I'll say it again. Joe Biden packed his cabinet with a bunch of Zionist war criminals, and it is getting harder and harder to tell if Israel is our client state or if we are theirs.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing that I cannot believe that these people that voted for Biden didn't see this coming. I mean, it's just extraordinary. They were so obsessed by just get Trump out, just get rid of Trump. And that's what I'm saying. Trump was the best weapon for the Clinton administration, because I tend not to see it as the Biden administration.
Yeah.
I just see it,
Yeah.
for the Clintons, as far as I'm concerned.
Just this morning, the head of the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, comes out and says, we're going to attach QAnon to the Republican Party. And that's our campaign strategy going forward, is we're going to paint everyone under the sun who isn't us as QAnon. And they think that this is going to be a winning strategy. And we've seen it employed already from January 6th going forward. Anyone who didn't have the establishment talking points on what happened at the Capitol was QAnon. Our channel got hit with a QAnon context warning because we had a thumbnail of Klaus Schwab in the fucking Star Trek getup. And that's what they based it on. That I'm convinced they based it on the thumbnail because there was no content in the entire broadcast that was related in any way, shape, or form to QAnon. Jason Burmis had a picture of Lou Dobbs in his thumbnail the other night for his live stream. Automatic QAnon context warning. Nothing that Jason, he was talking about Lou Dobbs losing a job. But because Dobbs was in the thumbnail, YouTube decided that it was a Q-related broadcast. This is the world we're operating in right now as members of the independent press.
Yeah. The war on terror is now the war against us.
Yeah.
It's the war on misinformation because we're in an information crisis.
Alex Jones comes out and says we're in an information war in like 2000. And fucking now mainstream press is out there going, we're in an information war. We need to tell you what's what. And fucking like, and people are supposed to look at this like it's not parody.
I know. It's it's crazy. Yep. And then, talking of parody, you've got that BBC report I sent you, talking about 100 ISIS attacks since New Year, which is not true.
And again, ISIS in Syria, for the record, for everyone, Vanessa Beeley is controlled by who?
The US.
Yeah. We had that the
US. This is well known. I think even Tulsi Gabbard has publicly said that.
Hillary Clinton has said that. She's on camera talking about it as a whoopsie. Oops.
Well, John Kerry said it in 2016 in a closed session in the UN, of course, that they allowed them to flourish in the hope that they would overthrow the Syrian government. So, and they morphed out of Al-Qaeda in Iraq anyway. I mean, the thing is that I keep trying to say this to people, but all of these brand names, it's just one massive mafia operation overlorded by the US coalition, right? That form gangs and take different names. That's it. And then the media will amplify one name or another. It's the same. That's what I keep saying about COVID. COVID is the Al-Qaeda of the flu virus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The media just sort of turned it into this terrorist flu virus, right?
Well,
and everyone's terrified of it.
Biden even said it, like trying to frame it in terms of this is our new war on, and so we had a war on drugs and drugs won. We had a war on terror and terror won. So now we're gonna have a war against the coronavirus. Guess what's gonna win? It's 2021. A good portion of the United States is still at war against a plant, and the plant is winning. Okay?
Yeah.
We're not going to beat the coronavirus using the same methods that we have used against the war on drugs and the war on terror. It's just not going to happen. But you can use it as the front to enslave a population.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a class war. It's not even the Great Reset. Really, is just another moniker for what it is. It's a class war.
And I mean, it's so funny to see as well how the Biden administration just so evidently pushes the Great Reset on all of us, but pointing that out is QAnon.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like you can't even criticize Biden properly because it's like the amount of people that would be talking to me about their vote for Biden and Harris and be like, oh, well, man, I just voted for Biden because of like the marginalized people. I really had you in mind when I was casting my vote. It's like, bitch, I just got tear gassed and illegally detained by a Democratic sheriff's office. What about Syrians? What about Palestinians? What about Libyans? What about everybody else in the fucking global south? Like, really, dude? No, you weren't. You voted for Biden to feel better about yourself so you could look good in some optics virtue signaling Olympics and not care about the repercussions of what could happen. It's had to get that one out there. Had to get that rant out there.
I want to kind of circle back to something that you had brought up earlier, Vanessa, and that's you didn't necessarily couch it like this. I'm going to, just because it's easier for me to remember this way. But the separation between legacy media and the rest of us. And Gloria and I subjected ourselves to way too many hours of World Economic Forum panels last week. I felt like I needed to somebody needed to smudge my soul afterwards. There was no
I'm still recovering.
Yeah. But there was a panel on press freedom.
Oh God, don't remind me.
And it was for mid-level narrative managers sitting around casually talking about the best ways to gatekeep without calling it gatekeeping, and the best ways to censor and manage information without calling it censoring and managing information. And it was horrifying and it was brutal, but it was also incredibly eye-opening in terms of, okay, well, this is how the pundit class is going to approach the next 4 years. This is partially how they're going to filter the information that we get, and this is who they hate.
Yeah.
And fucking the thing that we need to remember is that these useful fucking idiots, they all have fucking places they hang out, homes, and fucking shit like that. They're not just some all-powerful, entirely fucking hidden, faceless fucking cunts. You should be able to approach these people and talk to them. Do you remember door stopping? You remember when door stopping was a thing, when fucking journalists would just pop up out of the ground and be like, hey, answer this fucking question?
Yeah.
I think we need to do that to the narrative managers. I think we need to start door stopping the fuck out of the narrative managers and the pundit.
I'm very much down.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
Coming out there with okay, so here's what happened and here's what you said. Why did you say what you said? Just put these motherfuckers on blast. Seriously, there are enough people that watch this show that live in the cities where a lot of these people live and work and shit. Just fucking hang out in front of fucking the Hill building for 20 minutes. You'll run into them.
Yeah, for sure.
If you can't wait for them, then post some flyers.
Everyone is every regular human being who is just trying to live, breathe, work, fucking be human and survive is uncomfortable right now. Everybody's uncomfortable except for the pundit class and gatekeeper media and the people who are making the decisions that make everyone else uncomfortable. So I think it's time that they experience some of this discomfort.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely go for it.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah. No, I agree. Nobody does that kind of thing anymore. I was talking to someone about, the effect of social media. And actually, I believe that social media prepared us for lockdown, because we've all become so kind of focused in on the social media community. And therefore, lockdown in the beginning, anyway, wasn't such a big deal for people, because I don't think people physically interact anymore. So the stuff like door stopping has almost gone out of fashion. People now put in freedom of requests, freedom of information requests.
Yeah.
They write, they email. They don't actually go and door stop people anymore, right? Or stop them in the street and challenge them.
Yeah.
How many you see that these days? You don't really see it anymore. Okay, now we've got Corona, so it's even more difficult to do it. But
yeah, if you try some, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, now you're gonna be like,
yeah.
Now you're gonna be irresponsible by spreading.
I'll slide a megaphone across the street to a motherfucker to give him the chance. If really, like, if social distancing is the excuse you're going to use to not answer my question, I'll make it easy for you.
It's a bit. I've yelled at people through windows, like dead ass. Like, hi, my name is Gloria. I'm here to talk to you about Julian Assange. He's an award-winning journal. Exactly like that.
But at the end of the day, also wear the mask. Then nobody can see who you are while you're asking the question.
Yeah, I have a different mask that I wear for that than the usual one. That's the one. That's the one. But yeah, I'm all for it. I am.
Yeah. I mean, social distancing isn't an excuse at all, because I'm very loud.
And then there's that whole thing where I just saw Dingo in the chat. It's like, don't challenge AOC in the streets or you'll get accused of violence. I mean, when a tweet is violence, we've already lost the fucking plot.
Yeah, I know.
We already have. But I mean, what has been taken away from people because under the excuse of Corona is the ability to have a public policy debate. And Johnny Vedmore was on the show a couple of days ago when we were talking about this. And shout out to that guy. Whitney, I'm going to fight you for him. All right. Anyway, but we were talking about the fact that there's zero public policy debate about all of this massively paradigm shifting shit that has been hurled at us. We don't get to talk about what a lockdown is or means, or whether or not it's even legal, because it's not constitutional at all. It isn't
martial law.
Yeah. But I mean, that's it's not like we had a town hall about it or the ability for people to come together. We have a rec center in town because it's a little teeny tiny one stop sign fucking mountain town, so it's not like we have a city hall or an official government building or anything like that. So, in lieu of just doing it at the pub, we have it at the rec center. But like all that shit's gone too. We don't even have like a basic fucking community meeting space anymore. And that
coming in on their Zoom meetings, Steve.
It's not doing it for me. It's not. It's just not doing it for me. Look, man.
Really, Steve? I'm not surprised.
I'm a tactile human being. I am. And I do believe that like you can communicate a message much better in person than you ever could on camera.
That's very true.
And I like we are so severely missing that. And there's like a whole generation of kids that are just completely going to be void of that experience, or the experience of like going to a fucking con. If I don't get to go see some goddamn live music soon, I'm gonna fucking just flip out. I'm gonna flip the fuck out. Like at this point, I'm ready to book a couple of my friends and like throw an illegal music festival just so I can hear some goddamn live music.
You know, Steve, if it makes you feel any better, a pandemic has not stopped people in Santa Monica or downtown LA from handing out their mixtapes.
Sweet.
As trash as they are. I use them in exchange for like fucking Julian Assange flyers, so it's worth it.
Sure, but like, I mean, I've got a bunch of friends that are all in, you know, successful bands and shit like that. Like, I'm like this close to figuring out how much trouble I'll get in for organizing and holding a gathering of that size. Because I'm fucking sick of it.
Go for it.
Do it.
And live stream it.
Yes, Oz whistles. I can play an instrument. If it has strings, I can play it. Way the fuck out of practice. So I haven't played for shit since I started this show. Like it's been a little bit over 2 years since I've played with any kind of regularity. It's kind of a bummer. I need to learn how to manage my time. I have like the shittiest time management ever.
I think that's part of the course, isn't it?
I don't know, man. I'm just gonna start rambling. I don't even fucking know. Going on like no sleep and fucking over caffeinated.
Thanks, Convo Couch. Convo Couch says thanks for having Vanessa Beeley. She's great. Much love.
It's true,
Johnny.
It's true. Thanks for being an hour and 45 minutes late to the show, Convo Couch.
That, you know what, by Convo Couch standards, that's early.
It's about on time. Yeah, it is. Some fucking slacking ass motherfuckers, dude. When we were in DC, it was like herding feral kittens to try and get everybody on board together. We're like, okay, we're gonna do a live stream at 5. Make sure you're at the Airbnb by 5. We're gonna do a live 7:30 rolls around. We're like, okay, we're gonna shoot for 9.
Hey, bro, like I said, trying to get to a protest with them. It's like, okay, we're gonna start marching in 5 to 10 minutes here. Come, you know, Fee DMs me. Oh yeah, we're leaving now. We should be there in like half an hour. Send me directions on where you guys are.
Yeah.
I guess I should remind people while we're all here and still hanging out. There's still a couple hundred people watching. March 17th in Washington, D.C., Action for Assange is going to be there. We're going to be holding clovers for Assange as a 3-dimensional absurd protest. So make sure that you're there for that. We are going to be starting to do the crowdfunding for that this week. So I apologize in advance for having to ask you for money, but I'm gonna. Did we lose Beeley?
Aw.
I think so.
No, bummer.
She might pop back. We'll see.
That's true. At any rate,
Do your promo.
what else?
We have a website, Steve. What's it called?
OnlyFanShow.com is where the full archive of this channel and the Free Assange Vigils are. There's a Discord, which I got plans for that.
Discord.slownewsdayshow.com.
Discord.slownewsdayshow.com.
That'll point you to the invite.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Groovy. You can find like a lot of Vanessa's work at thewallwillfall.org. She also writes sometimes some of her stuff goes on Unlimited Hangout. RT, she's got Patreon. Yeah, I'd start there. I would.
All in the description.
Patreon.com/Vanessa Beeley.
Trying to think of more promos. Oh, I think I'm going to be on Combo Couch this Friday. Yeah, just flat the fuck out. We're trying to schedule, okay? I think we have a date, and I think it's this Friday. But don't take my word for gospel.
So Vanessa says her internet dropped out. But I mean, shit, dude, we're ready to close out anyway. I would like to do a show this afternoon if my tech guy is available.
Tech Ninja.
I ain't doing shit. Well, I'm programming, but
Okay.
whatever.
Thank you, Rob Juno. You rock, brother, man. What is that? Culture? That's a unique handle. Banjo, fiddle, guitar. The mandolin is my favorite stringed instrument and my preferred, my go-to. But I did just buy a new banjo a couple weeks ago, and I'm starting to get to know it. That's fun.
Yay! And we have Super Rays. Thanks, Ricky Rance. And Ricky Rance, keep speaking that truth, y'all. Thanks for supporting us. Peter MacArthur, $5 tip. Thank you, brother. And Alice Sunny Key, tip $2.
Way to be better at this than me, Glory. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Somebody's got to pick up my fucking slack on this. I'm fucking terrible at it. I really am.
I'm bad at promos too, but when I do them, I can put energy into them and hype. So thanks for the Super Rays, y'all. Because Rockfin is where it's at.
It's true. If you haven't made your free Rockfin account, you should go do that. I honestly, I don't know why we have a YouTube channel or why they keep letting us stream to YouTube. We're going to have the channel until they kick us off. Like, we're not going to leave politely. There are a few ways to get thrown out of a bar. And we're going to pick the most, I don't know, the one that causes the bar owner the most trouble. Yeah. There are times when I will politely leave places because I want to. There are times when I will politely leave places because it's the right thing to do. And there are times when I will not. This is one of those times. It really is. I love you guys.
You mean that, right?
Huh?
You're such a dickhead.
Me?
But like in the best way possible.
No, I know. I'm a fucking ass. I'm not out here trying to pretend like I'm nice all the time. Well, it's not this show.
But that's one of the reasons why we love you, Steve.
I'll accept that. I will. Really like it when people say nice things. I really don't. Fucking not into that shit. Anyway, I love you guys.
Say nice things to Steve in the chat.
Don't do that. We'll be back at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern And thanks always to Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos.
Woo.
Corey Jones for being the best damn co-host in the YouTube universe, and you guys in the chat, you fucking rock. We'll see you in a few hours. Good luck to us all.